everyone, it's AG, and today I will be talking about Riot Baby by Tochi Onyebuchi. I've read this book twice this year and have spoken a lot about it already, so I figured why not just make a review video for it as well. I would also like to note that Tor.com actually gifted me a copy of this book. Now, before we start, just a quick outfit check. So what I'm wearing is just like a regular shirt that I got from Reserved about a year or two ago. I thrifted these jeans via Instagram last week, and this lovely green cardigan is a hand-me-down from my sister, and it's from COS. Okay, now that all of that is out of the way, let's talk about Riot Baby. So the book follows two siblings called Kef and Ella. Their mother went into labor during the 1992 Rodney King LA riots. At the time, she was pregnant of Kef, which earned him the name Riot Baby. In this book, you get to see how Kef's and Ella's childhoods are defined and destroyed by both structural racism and violence. This eventually culminates in Ella leaving the house as a teenager and Kef ending up in prison. Ella visits Kef in jail in both the mundane and supernatural way. And in that way, she tries to show him a way to a revolution that will burn everything down. Like I mentioned previously, I have read this book twice now, and that was because the first time around, I didn't think that I grasped like everything or like the bigger picture of the story. Like for instance, it wasn't until the second time around that I noticed that the family actually moved from LA to like the other side of the country, to New York. And I think this is mainly due to the fact that I'm not American. There were certain things like when talking about gangs and stuff like that I didn't understand. So yeah, if you are not very familiar with American culture, I would definitely advise you to take it slow with this one. Also because this book was written in quite an elusive style, and so it becomes very easy to kind of like look over certain things that eventually turn out to be really important for the rest of the story. So yeah, you will have to do a little bit more work, but it's definitely worth the effort, at least in my opinion. So Riot Baby instantly thrusts you into the realities of living in a neighborhood that is plagued by violence, where the streets are ruled by gangs and where you can't even trust the police. The first passage is about how Ella, as a small kid, is riding the school bus, and the bus is filled with children who are throwing up gang signs for fun, and so the following passage ensues. Bus slowing, then stopped. Metallic tapping on the plastic doors, which whoosh open, and warm air whooshes in with the pirates that stomp up the steps in their red and black lumberjack tops with white shirts underneath, and their red bandanas in their pockets, and their .357 magnums in their hands. And one of them goes up to the ringleader kid who had been throwing up the signs most fervently, and presses the barrel of the gun to his temple and cocks back the hammer and tells the kid to stay in school, and if he catches him chucking up another crib sign, he's gonna knock his freaking top off. Feel me? And Ella can see in the gangbanger's eyes that he's got no compunction about it, that this is only half an act, it's only half meant to scare the kid away from the corner, that if it came to it, the guy would meet disrespect with murder. Imagine seeing that and also having that much comprehension of the entire situation at such a young age. This is really what makes this novella so disturbing. And it's not only the huge explicit events, it's also just the small things. For instance, when Ella is outside eating some candy and Grandma is sweeping away bullet shells from the driveway. The interesting thing about this book is that a lot of people consider this to be a dystopia, but aside from the powers that Ella has, this is actually the reality for a lot of people, and I think that is an important matter that should be pondered upon. Like I said, Ella has this power which she calls the Thing. It grants her a couple of abilities such as inducing explosions, spectral teleportation, which she uses to visit Kev in prison, but she also has the capability of seeing the future of people. For instance, as a kid, she sees this toddler on the street and then the following passage ensues. Vertigo pitches her forward. She leans on the sink, squeezes her eyes shut and tries not to think of what she saw outside. The boy named Jelani, grown to 10 years old, walking the 5 blocks home from school, abounds in his walk and his eyes, big and brown, before a lowrider screeches nearby and a man with a blue bandana over his face levels a shotgun out the window at someone standing behind Jelani, and after the bang, everyone scatters, leaving Jelani on the ground, staring up at the too bright sun for the longest 2 minutes of his life. It's these type of experiences that really got to me, because I cannot imagine what it's like living under such circumstances. You wonder in the first place how one ought to get out of such a situation. And then in the second place, how to do so without any mental scars. It's basically impossible. It's these type of living conditions that deny people access to social mobility and economic independence. And so as a result, socially not much changes and trauma continues to get passed on from generation to generation. It's just really a vicious cycle. Now tensions in the house start to rise when Ella is incapable of controlling her powers. This, on top of everything else, results in her fleeing the house and leaving Kev to his own devices. Seeing that his mother has to work an absolute ridiculous amount of hours in order to sustain them. And this theme is something that I have also seen in Ann Petrie's The Street, which by the way is a stellar read and I would definitely recommend. Anyway, the theme that I am referring to is that of parents having to work so many hours in order to support their family that children are left to their own devices outside of school and thus become very vulnerable because there are always people on the street who are looking to exploit them some way or another. This novella, in my opinion, did a great job of showing how the American system fails to treat all of its citizens equally. You can see this first and foremost in how the justice system and law enforcement is used as a tool of destruction rather than something to keep its citizens safe and rehabilitate the people who are capable of doing so. And secondly, you can see how it disproportionately targets Black people. Throughout the story, we get to see how insanely smart and talented Kev truly is and how he gets corrupted by the system and the environment in which he lives. And so at the end, he becomes a person who you can barely even recognize. When I was writing this review, I was strongly reminded of Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys. You can easily draw parallels between the main characters' downfalls. The book also touches on another huge problem, which is the way in which Black people are denied proper healthcare. Black women specifically have a higher mortality rate. Far too often their complaints are ignored and sometimes that denial of care becomes fatal. If you search this topic, you will be able to find loads and loads of information, even stories from people like Serena Williams, who had to fight to get the proper care that she needed. There's this one passage about a stillbirth, and it is so devastating. She sees the argument with the boyfriend and him grabbing the knife and her screaming, "Back up! I have a baby!" And the police arriving, feels the swollen hands and feet and face, and the doctors telling her just to take some Tylenol, always more Tylenol. Then the day before the baby shower, when her aches had become too much, and a doctor scribbling 143 over 86 in a chart during her appointment, and her doctor telling her to lie down, then telling her that he was going on vacation and she could deliver the baby by C-section that day if she wanted, 6 weeks early. Then the car ride a few days later on the way to her boyfriend's, and the wetness between her legs, which is not water like she expects, but blood. In the rush afterwards, someone saying that elevated blood pressure had separated her placenta from her uterine wall. Then haziness, and mama asking over and over again, "Is he all right? Is he all right?" Then the silence of the delivery room, the most deafening silence Ella has ever heard in her life. So devastating. And it's also this ridiculous thing of doctors planning C-sections around their holiday. It's a legit phenomenon and huge problem. There are statistics that show spikes in C-sections around the times that doctors go on holiday. And the fact that this happens, that people decide to put their own enjoyment in front of people's health and life, is just mind-boggling to me. But moving on to the rest of the book, I would have loved to see more of the powers that were in the book. In my opinion, they definitely enhanced the stories, like the use of these powers to show like flashbacks and flash forwards, if that's a word. Yeah, flash forwards. So yeah, I would have loved to see more of that. Also, it never really was quite clear to me as to why Kev ended up going to jail. Like in the book, it seems that he attempted like armed robbery with a ski mask or something, but on the back of the book it says that he got sent to jail for being black in America. So I think that is again kind of like a problem with like how elusive the story was, because even like the second time around I didn't fully understand. And then another consequence of this being written in such an elusive style was that I couldn't always tell like who certain passages were about, because the book does switch from perspective quite often, and so sometimes I would read like the entire passage and it would only be at the end that I would actually realize who this was all about. Anyway, a strong point of this book was that I felt that Onyebuchi did a great job of using speculative fiction to show what may lie ahead. Technological progress in this day and age is growing exponentially, and that is going to have a huge influence on how structural racism is going to operate in the future. It's something that I think about quite often. The impact advanced pieces of technology such as drones, facial recognition, and algorithms are going to have. I mean, we are already seeing this in politics. There are political parties that use statistics. I literally need 1 minute. 1 minute is all I'm asking. there are political parties that use algorithms and statistics to gerrymander, ensuring that the maps they draw will be favorable to their party. It's a very scary but also necessary thing to talk about. Anyway, that is everything I had to say with regards to Riot Baby. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the content that I make, perhaps consider joining my Patreon. I run a monthly book club where we read diverse classics. It's loads of fun. We are currently reading Anne Petry's The Street, and it's like one of my favorite books of the year. And next month we will be reading The Aleph and Other Stories by Jorge Luis Borges from Argentina, so I'm very excited for that. Anyway, you can also support me by donating a coffee. Either way, thank you so much again for watching, and I hope to see you in another video.